It's perfect. Ah, there we go. Brilliant. Thank you. Welcome back, and thank you for joining me on the channel again. I've got a fantastic guest this year with over 21 years experience in the intelligence community. There is a long list of all your accomplishments, which are absolutely amazing. I'm going to go digging deeper into them in a while. And known professionally around the world as A.M. Adair. Amma, how are you?
Good, thanks. Yeah, I chose to use my initials because, as an author, I write thrillers. And, I hate to say it, but in a lot of cases, people do judge a book by its cover, and you see a thriller written by a woman, and it's a very heavily male-dominated genre. I didn't want to turn people off.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I know somebody who does exactly the same thing in a different genre. It's like romance genre, and he writes romance, and he uses his initials purely because of the fact that most women pick up a book and say, "What the hell do men know about romance?"
Yep, I can
So,
totally say that because I guess morbid curiosity might have taken over at some point. Like, ooh, I wonder how would
yeah,
this turn out? But
do you think you could get it right?
yeah, I really did just want the book to stand on its own, and not to mention it looks kind of cool on the cover. So
Yeah. Oh, I did. I did. I love the cover, especially with your latest one with the shot chest piece. That was
yes,
just
yes,
fantastic. Oh,
I'm really proud of how it turned out. It's one of the fun parts of doing the books is the collaboration on the covers. It's an
mm,
artistic outlet.
yeah. The famous saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover."
Hmm.
Everybody said it so many times, but I heard, that the cover is to grab your attention, to make you read the title. The title is to make you flip it over and make you read the back of the book, and the back of the book is to make you take it to the checkout and buy it. So everybody does, whether they like it or not. And I've bought books purely because of the cover in the past, and and it is a bit of a cliche, but yeah, we all do. We can't help it, can we?
It's natural. You have to have something that grabs your attention. You have the crowd of books. Going into a bookstore is like Shangri-La. There's just awesomeness
Yeah.
everywhere. How do you choose in all the awesomeness? So that's kind of that's where the cover comes into play to make it spotlight and jump out and say, "Pick me!"
Exactly. I spent that. Can you see that one? That was the cover of
Yes,
mine. Let me see,
I
I think
like
I've
it.
got a copy of the book here. I spent so much time on that, and
I love
I was like a detail. I don't think I can say the word on this without getting banned off YouTube. But I was I was like right down to details with it. No, I want this and I want that, and I think the guy hated me at the end because when I
Oh
come back, I said,
no!
"Guess what? Book number two's coming out soon." He went, "Really?"
Oh, here we go again.
So, but yeah, I've actually just finished book number two, and one of the hardest things of writing this, I don't know how you found this, is have you written, because you've done four books now, right?
Mhm.
Which
Yes,
are Shadow Game, Shadow War, The Deeper Shadow, and A New Game, yeah? The new
correct.
game being the latest one with the chess
Yes.
piece. Um, have you written each of those so they could be read as a standalone, or do they have to be read in order?
That was a tough lesson for me to learn, but yes, they are standalone. And quick down and dirty on that is when I started writing, I intended to write a trilogy. So I had
Hmm.
this idea for how each book would flow. I'm a pantser, so I don't hard outline everything. I just had the general concept of how I wanted each book to go and the arc
Hmm.
of where I wanted to see the series go. So I started writing like that. And then I got with my editor, who, through trial and tribulation. The woman who finally became my editor, she took me through a developmental on my first one, and I realized how many mistakes I made trying to make it so it was all part of a flowing series, because
Yeah.
you need to be able to pick the book up on its own,
Hmm.
understand what's going on, but then you also at the same time can't piss off the people who have already read the rest of the series. So it's that
Exactly.
happy medium, and that is a really, really hard line to walk and like find that sweet spot. So after the first book, I was feeling pretty good about myself. I got this, and I turned in my first draft of my second book, and oh man, the proverbial red pen of death came out, and it was just brutal. It's like,
Oh dear.
oh yeah, like the gut punch. I'm like, I curl up underneath my desk in the fetal position, like, oh God, what did I do? Uh,
Yeah.
but I worked through that sophomore book slump that everybody gets into. So beware, second book. Whew.
Yeah.
Um, but I learned a lot more there. And so by the time I got to the third book, Shadow War, I felt a little bit better. I felt more
Yeah, more
confident.
confident.
Yeah, I wasn't swaggering like I was with book 2. So I was ready for a few, jabs in the face. But surprisingly, it was a lot smoother. Like I had finally put the pieces together, and that book won an independent press award. And so I thought, I was like, okay, I'm done with what I wanted to do. But then my main characters really weren't done with me. So that's where the fourth book came out, because I just
Wow.
had these ideas that just kept, like, these scenes kept playing in my head. I'm like, all right, time for book 4.
Yeah, oh, that's brilliant. I love that. I mean, it almost makes you feel when you go to book 2, you almost want something like a bracket or a box that you can put. If you read book 1, you don't need to read this bit, but basically this is what happened in book 1, and and you can't. You've got to quickly kind of give a summary of what happened, and like you say, it is really, really awkward because it's such a tightrope between, like, kind of, and I've done it myself. I'm reading an explanation. I'm kind of, I know this because I've read the last book. I've been part of this series for ages. So so you don't want it to go on for too long, but you need any new readers to kind of. So yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Yeah, and
one of the most awkward parts.
I think I'm fortunate because my editor, I mean, she's a wonderful human being. When we first met, she called me and we talked so she could get to know me and get a feel for what my story was. So I felt like she understood things. But she's a civilian. She's had totally different life experiences than I have. So when she asked me questions, it helped me key in on things that I would take for granted, like terminology or phrases or things that just are kind of natural parlance for me. But for her, it was just like, I don't understand this, what's going on here. So that really helped me kind of refine things and make it so it was more digestible for a broader audience. And
Yeah.
And she would ask me questions about things like, oh, I hadn't even considered that. Okay. Or if there was a part that she wasn't getting, but I knew it was in there, then I would be like, okay, how do I make this so that it jumps out a little bit more so it's not lost in everything else? And it ended up being a beautiful collaborative thing. So much so that this year I have a novella coming out and a short story that's going to be in an anthology. But they're not the same world. So it's a whole new world for my novella. It's a psychological thriller. And then my short story is a horror story. So outside my genre.
You've gone,
But at the same time, I had to have her look at it. She's become my lucky charm. My crutch. Like, please, could you? I know their editor's going to get into this because there are other editors involved. I'm like, could you look at it first, please?
Yeah, it's I know exactly. It's the same with like the guy who narrated my audiobook for the first one. I want the first thing I said to him, I said, look, if you do this, I need to know that you're happy to continue doing the rest of the series, because I don't want to be changing the voices and the accents and everything else to, and yeah, you get comfortable with your editor, you get comfortable with your narrator, you get comfortable with it, and you're like, I want that one back. So yeah, it's they don't realize it when they're signing up, but they're getting contracted to you.
This is a continuing relationship. We're bonded now.
How have you found that as well, by the way? Because I mean, I know a few things where even today, for example, I am going through the editor sent me my book back, and and one of the things that I've put in the book is the lads were talking about doing a walk past for the target property, and he changed it from the lads walked past. Sorry, the lads were going to do a walk past to the lads walked past the property. I'm like, no, it's called a walk past.
Yes.
And because so he's trying to put everything in grammatically correct English, and I have to keep going back. No, that's a noun. So how have you found that with the parlance?
I actually, it's happened quite a bit where it's been like, hey, this grammar doesn't like it, or even my editors like, this isn't how the correct verb terminology. I'm like, actually it is. So in this world, this is what you would say. So, she's gotten to that point now where she'll just make a note of it. And she's like, is this what you really meant to say? And if it's confusing to her, she'll explain to me why it's confusing. So then I can at least then go back and like, how can I make this so the terminology is still correct in like the dialogue or what they're doing, but, make it so that somebody who has no purview in this world would understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So
I cheated with mine, and what I've done is I've gone all the way through the book, and I've written the story, And then when you get to a section where you say, oh, the gentleman had no VDMs, and then what I'll do, I'll have a little section of go tradecraft. VDM stands for visual distinguishing marks, and explain what they are, and and
Yep.
blah blah blah. And then that way, anybody experienced who doesn't need to can skip past that little section, which is all in italics and brought in a little bit, and they can just carry on reading the story, or you can read it as a story, learn the little bits of tradecraft as you go, or you can just read it as a field manual if you want to. So it's kind of 3 books in one. So
see, and who said you can't learn from fiction? It's like you learn all kinds of stuff watching movies and reading books, because there's a lot of reality in there. Of course, the stories are made up, but that's what makes them, well, in a lot of cases with difficult subject matter, it makes it palatable, it makes it interesting, it makes it fun.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of the stuff on the TV is usually wrong or miles away. I mean, it's based on reality, but they have to do things for, poetic license. Where what I've done in the book, I've kept a lot of it. A lot of it's actually based on experience and things I've actually been through and done myself. So, it's good because you can explain why things are done in a particular way and why they're not done another way. And for educational purposes, the books are definitely the way forward.
And I always enjoy that. I always like seeing when the details are right. Obviously, I don't want things over explained to me, but I like seeing those nuances where the little things that tell you somebody's been in the world, somebody understands what's going on. It's like, oh, that was really good. They got that. And so it also makes it jump out when it doesn't. Tom Clancy, brilliant. Everybody know he kind of started this whole military thriller genre. I mean, he is the military thriller genre. But then you go back and look at some of his earlier work, say Rainbow Six. This is the one that always jumps out at me because people always ask me for pet peeves in books. But there's an interrogation sequence in there, and it's whatever you want to call it, Mutt and Jeff, bad cop, good cop. But it's really over the top. It's something that would never actually happen. And then after they get their break, then they just drop their characters and you were stupid enough to fall for it, basically. And I'm just throwing the red flag. No, that's not how that works. It's I'm so mad. I was that was this is not how you do this.
Oh, I know. Everything in the book that I've written, I based. I mean, literally the continuity has to be 100%. So if there is a country I've written about, I've been to that country. If there is a dish I've eaten it. If there's a code to a door, it's the code to that door. Or was at the time of me writing the book anyway. So I mean, literally, I've put all sorts in there. Whether it's a website or a secret military installation, if it's in the book, it's in the world. It's this, and it all started from. And it was an author I actually liked, and I can't remember. In fact, even if I could remember, I probably shouldn't say. But I remember reading one of his books, and the main character landed in London, got into a taxi cab, got caught up in traffic, and he handed the taxi driver £100 bill, and I'm like, no, he didn't, because we don't have them. The most we have is a 50, and it's a £1 note, not a dollar bill. So, and I was really, really furious about it. And I thought, get your continuity right.
Yep.
But one of the best books where you're on about the little nuances for when you can relate to something. Have you read Damascus Station by David McCloskey?
Not yet. It is on my reading list.
Oh, brilliant. I knew I was going to enjoy it when I got to the first little bit when he'd just done an SDR and he thought he was black, and he said, and I got that feeling in the pit of my stomach that we all get, am I actually surveillance free? And that was the bit where I went, yes. That's somebody gets it. Somebody's been there, somebody's done it. Because you can feel like you've done everything properly and still have that lingering doubt that kind of gets to you. So that really, really cheered me up when that happened.
I feel the same way. It's you get those moments. Those are exactly the moments. The moments you're they get it. They get it, and it's great. Yeah. And it's a small detail that most people probably wouldn't even pick up on, but it does matter in making it feel authentic and genuine. And don't get me wrong, I love artistic license. I want to be entertained, which is why I like fiction and why I like watching movies instead of documentaries or nonfiction books, because the entertainment factor's there. But at the same time, if the details aren't plausible enough that it yanks you out of the story, then it's not fun anymore. It's
no.
So that's like, yes, go by all means, have fun with it, but at least don't do something that's going to take me out of the story now where I'm just thinking, oh, come on.
Yeah, I'm probably guilty on that on 2 or 3 little tiny things, but sometimes you do have to remember that it is for entertainment. And I think because I've dealt with a lot of military guys, because your husband's Navy, right? High-ranking Navy officer.
We both were.
Yeah. Now I've noticed it's generally your military guys, but not your intelligence guys, but generally your military guys who will sit in a film going, "No, he's got his finger on the trigger. That magazine, that's not the way that she's done." And you think, "Oh, come on!" And then these are the same guys who will sit down and watch Battlestar Galactica or or some kind of fantasy dragon movie, and you're like, kind of, yeah, okay. So for me, I'm thinking if you can suspend your belief to watch some fantasy dragon story or some Disney movie or whatever the hell it is, then surely you can do it for a couple of minutes when you know you're watching a military movie. All right, we know they're not going to have their finger on the trigger. We know, that your stuff. Just let it slide. It's a bit of fun. It's entertainment. Watch it like it's a school play.
That is an excellent way of saying it, because you're absolutely right. And that's 100% what happens. Like, I will be able to watch a movie and be totally good with it. And then there will be the running critique next to me of like, well, that's bad tactics. I'm like, it's a movie.
Yeah. Sorry, Jay.
Exactly. But at the same time, I also am guilty of, for example, on the cover of my 3rd book, she's holding a gun. And, the original draft they gave back to me, her finger was in the trigger. I'm like, I can't. It literally made my stomach clench up. I'm like, I just can't put this out there. It's like, it's the little thing in the back of my head just kept itching. Like, this is just no.
Yeah.
Luckily, the designer was very understanding, and was like, okay, would you show me what you mean? And I actually took out one of my pistols and I held it properly for them, so finger outside the trigger and everything, and took a picture of me holding it at the angle that it was, so that way they could use it as a map to the picture. But it was great that they were that considerate of it, but it's one of those things. It's like, I can't.
Yeah, I struggled with it. I was writing a scene where, if you can imagine, the protagonist is at a standoff with an enemy. The enemy's picked up a rifle, he shot one person, and the protagonist has turned around and he's gone to draw his pistol, and then it goes back to the enemy who's pulled the bolt action back, and it's spat the round out. And I'm going backwards and forwards between the two, and I've said he's got, he's aimed, he's got the front sight lined up, his back sights are blurred, blah 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 blah. He's took up first pressure, the guy's pushed the bolt forward, and then and I'm doing this whole thing, and I think I got to the point of second pressure on the trigger. And the first editor I ever had, he changed the whole thing from Jensen drew his pistol and yanked the trigger as and I'm like, no, he didn't.
Yep, I'd have flipped out. I would have flipped out. But that's kind of what you're talking about. That's how you found a good editor, because the first couple of editors I had, like my literary manager was, helping me try to find one that worked for me, and they would send me back notes, and I was just like, no, this doesn't work. And I would try to explain why, and it just wasn't working. So that's why it was such a breath of fresh air when my editor now, when Lisa Sarasoli called me and had this conversation, like, help me understand what direction, what's the tone, what's the world, what do you envision? And she just chit-chatted with me to get to know me for a little while. So I felt like she got it. So, it made it that much easier when she'd be like, hey, I'm not sure if you meant to say this. And I would write a comment like, no, this is proper. And like, what didn't you understand? And so that way we would have this dialogue going back and forth. So that way I could keep, the tone and the flow that I wanted, but she could get all the grammar and her editorial.
Which is great as well, because when civilians are reading this, you've got that perfect kind of agent between yourself and the civilian to kind of say, look, most people aren't going to understand what this is unless they've either worked in the industry or they're a kind of spy hard kind of spy-fi reader. So it does it kind of works well. So it sounds like you found the perfect person there.
Like I
So,
said, I am extremely lucky, and that's why I kind of she's kind of a crutch now. It's like, I'm going to have other editors for these two projects this year, and I'm still like, hey, Lisa, could
yeah.
you
Yeah,
keep
that's
up
it.
this
Chain
for
her
me?
up, keep her in the basement. Never let that one go.
It's like she's so wonderful though. She's like, yeah, like just let me see it. I mean, they're short projects, so she was able to kind of knock them out, but at the same time, she's doing me that solid. Like, thank you.
Wow. So what inspired you to go down the route? You said one's a thriller and the other one's a horror, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what was the inspiration behind? Well, let's start with the horror. What happened there? What made you get up one day and say, "Do you know what? I want to scare people"?
That's actually not what happened. It's like, what I can't go into a whole lot of details on this, so I'm not intentionally being cagey. It's just because we're building up the publicity for it that's going
Oh,
to come
okay,
out as the book's going to be released. So we're kind of keeping things on the down low.
yeah, okay.
But I got invited to do it by a friend of mine. A couple of colleagues got this idea to get a bunch of authors together to do this anthology, and they extended the invite to me, and I took it. I was like, wow, this would be quite the challenge. So not only is it outside my genre, but I had to kind of keep with the theme, and I had to keep with the word count. So I took it on as not so much I want to do horror. I took it on as this is going to be a challenge. So
Yeah. Oh, wow.
it and it was fun. It was a different kind of creative expression, and I had to try to dig deep, man, because I haven't watched a horror movie in a long time. And it's like I remember reading, like some Stephen King and like some early Dean Koontz, where there's a little bit
Oh,
more
wow.
on the horror side than suspense, and so I'm like trying to dig back into those memories to try to find something that works. But it really did come down to it was an opportunity and it was a challenge. So
Yeah.
I
Oh,
jumped on it.
wow. I don't. I'm very much like I don't watch horrors anymore. I used to when I was younger, and I remember like things like American Werewolf in London and things like that. And just
Yeah,
they were scary
classics.
back then, and then of course when you get a little bit older and you start living in the real world, and then you put a horror movie on one day, and then you just watch it going, oh please.
Yeah.
And I remember making my mother-in-law laugh with this the once when I turned around and said, because you got the whole scene, nobody in reality does what these people do. There'll be like a bump in the night, and they'll go down with the flashlight, the usual flashlight that's just had brand new batteries in it, but for some reason halfway down the stairs starts blinking. And they'll be going down into the cellar beneath the house, which is in pitch blackness. The light's not working, and then all of a sudden there'll be a growl. And and what will they do? They'll go, Jack, is that you, Jack? And everybody knows Jack doesn't growl. So so it's one of those things that you just think, oh come on, in reality, if you were even halfway down the stairs, you'd be like, screw this, I'm out of here.
I'm out.
And you close the door. I'm going to go and find somebody with a gun and a couple of big friends, and so and I suppose that's why I probably stopped watching it, because a lot of it just didn't seem believable. A lot of the scary stuff wasn't scary. It was more relying on making you jump than actually scaring you. And I think that's where it all started going a bit kind of south for me. So, and I don't know why. I mean, I wonder what the appeal is to horror stories. I mean, it's like kind of, end of the day comes, I want to go to bed, but first I'm going to frighten the living daylights out of myself before I try and get some restful sleep.
I think it really is the adrenaline rush. Is like that, you get I think it was Lee Child who said, that like these type of stories give us like the feeling that we know we shouldn't have in real life. Like, so we get to experience these things that really, if they actually happened, we wouldn't be so cool with it.
Mm.
So, and I think in a horror movie, you get that feel, that heart pounding, you get, that adrenaline spike, that fight or flight is really kicking in, but you're not actually in danger. And so I think that's, I guess, kind of like a roller coaster. You're
Yeah,
not really going to get hurt, but at the same time, when your stomach drops out, you're like, whoa! It's like,
yeah, it must be. It must be just that thrill that
yeah.
we all must really love danger secretly, even if it's like you say in the form of a book, lying in bed and kind of
But you know
scaring
what?
away.
Maybe everyone's just secretly an adrenaline junkie, and instead of like bungee jumping or doing base jumps off of buildings or tall cliffs, you watch a horror movie or you watch a really really driving suspense, to get your heart rate pumping.
Yeah, I remember when I was studying about writing, and I remember there was this fantastic bit where the feeling of horror writing was summed up in one short kind of, I think it was like a paragraph, and it was, you're the last person in the world, you're at home when there's a knock at the door. I thought, wow, I love that. Yeah, that gives you that feeling instantly of kind of where you need to be with, making what you need to make the reader feel.
Yep. So those are the moments I do like, suspense, horror, whatever. But those moments where the hair on the back of your neck stands on end, you're like, oh, here it comes. Yeah, like those are great moments. And I think a lot of the modern horror movies probably have gotten away from that because it's coming and it's going to be violent and it's going to be bloody and gory and that really doesn't scare me.
No, like you said, they've become laughable, almost animated. With kind of you'll have some female who's always in a white tank top. Every single horror movie from the 1970s onwards, white tank top, it's standard. She'll be running away and trip over, or somebody's walking, plodding along with a big axe or a chainsaw or something. There's always 3 foot behind, no matter how fast she runs and how far she gets. And of course, that obviously is designed to try and give you that adrenaline rush. Get away, get away, get away! So which is brilliant. But it becomes a bit like for people like me who are skeptical, like, oh, come on.
I've seen this one before. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, there are people who come out with really great stuff that, you really kind of go, oh, that was clever. Or really just like, oh, I didn't see that coming, like a new twist on it. And those are always really interesting to see. So, I applaud everybody who kind of comes up with something that's, a new twist on, kind of the classic, girls running away from the guy with a hatchet.
Yeah.
Every so often they have one that's just like, whoo.
And that's what we need more of, because I think that a lot of the modern movies are relying more on visual effects, like gory and special effects and that kind of thing. I think Stephen King's was it or The Thing or I think that was when
that's it.
Yeah, of course. I think that was a big turning point, and that's when everyone said, "Oh, we can make this really, really gory, and the more gory we make it, the more people are going to love it, the scarier it'll be." And it's kind of now they've got to the point where they're relying on it, a bit like the Expendables, an all-star cast with nothing actually any good happening in the movie. It was like kind of they're relying on stars and no story.
Now that one, and I full-on confession, the Expendables series, that is right up my alley.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. I grew up watching these guys as the action heroes in those roles. And I love those classic blow up the bad guy with a smile movies, those corny one-liners, action packed. So when they came out with the Expendables, it was like everything from my childhood that I loved all in one movie. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever.
And that's what they were relying on, guys, people like us who exactly. And I think they forgot to add a story, but we enjoyed it anyway because of who was in it and the fact that there was lots of explosions and guns.
When they got Chuck Norris to tell a Chuck Norris joke in the second one, I almost fell out of my seat in the theater. I laughed so hard. It was the greatest moment ever. And who knew Jean-Claude Van Damme was always meant to be a villain? Because he was more fantastic as an actor and as a villain than he ever was as a good guy.
Definitely, yeah. See, now I can kind of sum up where the world has gone wrong in the last, probably since about the year 2000 onwards. And I know exactly what's happened and why the world's in such a bad state. We don't have any bloody good theme tunes anymore. Remember in the 1980s, you got the A-Team come on, all you need to hear was dun, 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 and you're like, wow, Knight Rider. There was everything had a theme tune, Street Hawk, Airwolf. There's so many great theme tunes that you hear. The Saint, you'd hear the James Bond music, all these theme tunes you would hear, and you would be like, "Hey!" It just give you that buzz and that feeling. Now, what you get, dum dum. Welcome to Netflix. Skip intro. Nobody bothers with it anymore. Straight to the and that's why we don't get that same feeling of excitement that we used to get back then.
That's an excellent point. Actually, I just had a little touch of that because I don't know if you know that they're making a new Beverly Hills Cop. So Axel F. And all I heard was that, like the beginning of the trailer, I heard the music. I went, Axel F. As soon as you hear it, you know it, and you're right back in that moment. So you're absolutely right. And really, probably the last one of that. And it wasn't even an action movie. I think it was like Harry Potter. You hear the Harry Potter, anything John Williams, you hear the music for, and you're like, I know exactly what this is.
Yep. So with that in mind, if anybody's watching who can write me my own personal theme tune, that'd be great. I need to get that organized as soon as possible. Just so I know when I'm coming into the room. There
you go. It'll be the intro for your show. It'll be perfect. You even fade out into your music at the end. Very
Yeah.
classy.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to start working on that this weekend. Fiverr.com, here we come. So, when you kind of took to writing, because I've noticed in the intelligence world, there tends to be two kinds of people, well, three really. They either go back into intelligence in the private sector, they go into sales, which, if you can convince people to betray everything and everybody, then I'm sure you can convince them to buy a car, or they become a writer. And I've noticed that most of the time, the ones that become a writer were already the keen readers. So what was your kind of inspiration in the spy-fi genre to kind of, that really did it? I know you mentioned Tom Clancy, but what were the other ones that really ticked the box?
Truthfully, James Patterson and Dean Koontz were so pivotal for me. I think it's just because they were the first series and like adult authors that I got into that I couldn't get enough of everything that they were writing. So, growing up, I'd always kind of gravitated towards, like a fantasy suspense genre, but it was back in the day, like R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike. And, it was young adult stuff. And then I was in high school when I picked up my first Dean Koontz, and then a little bit later on, my first James Patterson. And I couldn't get enough of it. It was like the switch turned on. I'm like, yes, this is awesome. And so I would voraciously read everything they put out. And then I started looking at other, authors in the genre, and that thriller became my genre pretty easily, pretty handily. There are several other books that are really standouts for me, like shockingly, The Count of Monte Cristo. And, again, kind of a thriller. It's, classic literature, but, it's it has a lot of intrigue in it. And, that was, school makes you read books, and I never liked any of the books my school made me read. But then when we got Count of Monte Cristo, I was the kid who finished it before everybody else was answering all the questions in the class. I was so into it. So it was like, it was a major turning point for me, and just my appreciation of books in general and literature. And so truthfully, the thought to write a book came as a total whim. And
Really?
I was on deployment, and when you're on deployment, things, you have your highs and your lows, and when you get into those down times, you got to do something to keep your mind going. And I just started fiddling around with things. I never really thought it would go anywhere, but then I started, trying it. Yeah, this isn't working. This isn't working. And then I had the strangest thing, the TV show Castle. You ever seen it?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
The very first episode, the main character's talking about why he killed off his main character. And it was because there weren't any surprises for him anymore. And something about him, that little speech, made it click in my head to stop trying to force a story to go the direction I thought it could, and just let the characters talk to me. And I know that's something every author and every teacher is ever going to tell you, but it never really made sense to me until that moment. And so after that, I kind of just started going with the flow, and the story took me in new directions, and it became exciting for me because I really didn't know where I was going with it. It was the pantser thing. I am living by the seat of my pants in this moment as I'm typing. And so it became fun and addicting in that way. And then, it's cathartic, because then when you write thrillers, I might want to strangle somebody in real life, but I can't do that and get away with it. But I can do it on the page, and everybody thinks it's great entertainment. So there's also that cathartic side of it, being able to deal with situations and emotions and things that you might not otherwise get to deal with. And it was when I got to the end of the book. I know you see my husband trying to sneak by. He failed.
Bless him.
But, it's like he can't hear you. But when I got to the end of it, I kind of like, well, do I just sit on this, or do I see where I can go with it? I'm like, well, why not? I'll give it a shot. So I got some books about, literary agents and managers and the publishing companies and editors, and did a little homework on the querying process and just gave it a shot. And I picked up my manager pretty easily. And we went through the querying process, or he went through trying to get it one of the big five and the other traditional publishing houses to pick it up. But as this is going on, I went on deployment again, and I kind of forgot about it. But as I was on deployment, everybody around me is using e-readers. Like nobody was carrying around a bunch of books. It wasn't like the good old days where I would bring stacks of books with me on deployment. Everyone had their Kindles or Nooks. And that's when I was like, well, I could just go ahead and direct publish now and be done with it. And just, it'd be out there. And so I went back to my manager, and he has this nice little company where he helps, it's a hybrid model where he helps indie publishers get everything they need to publish their stuff. And so we just went that way, and it's been great for me, especially because when I first did it, my first book came out while I was still on active duty.
Oh, wow.
There's no deadlines outside of the deadlines I already had that I really wanted to add to my time. So being indie made it so that way all the deadlines are mine. All the all those wickets that I need to hit are entirely of my own doing, which of course I still managed to tie myself into knots, but I didn't have a publisher breathing down my neck saying you need to do X, Y, and Z. And I didn't have an editor was like, well, tough, you're going to do it our way. It's like, it's me. And I think I got a little addicted to that. I could have gone back and tried to query again with a traditional publishing mechanisms, but
I don't blame you.
Why not?
Why give up control? Yeah, exactly. You mentioning Castle, that is something that, so you and I have something slightly in common here with Castle. That there was a pivotal moment in that for me. I'd had a couple of attempts at trying to write an autobiographical type book, which I'd kind of shelved and picked up several times, and you know what they say, if you can't take rejection, don't become a writer. Exactly. And I thought, right, so I got it was a friend of mine from MI6 who said, write it as fiction, and I said, yeah, I probably will at some point. It was shelved, and I was sat down, I was watching Castle, and it was when James Patterson was sitting, when they're all sitting around the poker table, and I thought, I want to sit at that poker table one day. So that was it. I was like, that was my inspiration, and I picked up the book, and I kind of started writing, and that was when it just gave me a new energy for it. And I actually told James Patterson as well, years later, I said that was what kind of gave me that little bit of extra inspiration. And he shattered my dreams. He said, yeah, we don't play poker in real life. He said, yeah, well, thanks, I'm still trying to get at that table, but he did tell me a funny story about it. He said he was on a flight, I forget where he said he was going, and he said, funnily enough, he says I generally stop for anybody who recognises me just out of courtesy. I don't like to be nasty. He said, and some woman turned around and said, hey, I know you. And he said, oh yeah, and she said, yeah, you're the guy who plays Patterson on that TV program, aren't you? He said, yeah, and I'm going to carry on playing him while I get off the car, when I get off the plane.
Oh wow. I love that so much. I love the show. And obviously James Patterson, big influence. Just Kiss the Girls was the first book of his I read, and it's still one of my all-time favorite books. That book was just awesome, disturbing, but awesome.
Do you read through all the Alex Cross as well?
I've read through most of them. It's like, just because now my reading list is impossible. Like all of our reading lists are just never ending. I try to go out and I'll catch up on authors that I'm like, ooh, I really wanted to read on this person's stuff, and I'm getting behind on books, so I'll go and start reading those, and then I'll get hooked, and then I'll be like, oh, there's more stuff that's come out over here that I've missed, and I got to get back to that. And
my to be read pile grows faster than I can read them, and of course I've got like a bathroom book, and I've got a bedroom book, and I've got a car book, and I've got all. So if ever I'm sitting in the car and I'm waiting, for the wife was having a nail done or something, and the problem is with that is having all these books in different places where no matter where I am, I can do a bit more reading. Is they all start merging into one, and you can't remember what story you read. What from years afterwards, people will say, "Oh, have you ever read so and so?" And you go, "Yeah, I remember that. What happened in it? There was that," and it kind of becomes a bit of an alloy.
Yep, I have an Audible. I have something on my Kindle. I have a hard copy. I try to just keep it to that, but I cycle through them. So I'll get through the end of an Audible. I'm like, okay, what's the next one on my Audible? And then okay, I finished this one on the Kindle, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think it's wonderful, and I love having this problem, but it is a problem that my reading list is constantly growing because there's not only new material coming out from authors I already love, but then I'm meeting new authors. I'm, getting exposed to new books and even in other genres that I just can't wait to dive into. So
Yeah.
like on my nightstand right now, I think it's about this thick with books I picked up last summer at Killer Nashville with a bunch of mystery writers. And
Wow.
it's like, these are books I haven't read yet. All right. Yep. There's coming on with me. And it's like,
have you discovered any new authors that you've kind of got your eye on that you think, wow, this is one that's really going to be somebody I'm going to follow and everything?
Oh, you mean as in like new up and coming?
Yeah.
It's like, I have my kind of circle of, I guess you could say starting authors that I'm big fans of. So, like Eric Bishop, Steve Stratton, those are my boys, Zach James, David Dyerling, these guys, they've been really cool with me, and we all kind of seem to have started at the same time. So I'm team all these guys because I want to say they're awesome. I'm fortunate in the fact that since I'm retired and treating this as more of a hobby than my next career, I don't feel the stressors that they do. I'm not, obviously it has its downsides too, because I'm not as prolific in like my sales or my social media presence as they are, but I'm okay with that. So that's, I'm happy with where I am, but it also allows me to support them and to, be in this group and like their big cheerleader, like, let's go guys, crush it.
Yeah, and of course it is kind of a lot of people who they don't realize that when you've written the book and you put it out there and you think, yes, I've done it, that you've got to the start line, because now you've got to start pushing it and giving people all these appearances on here, there, and everywhere to kind of get people to read the book and build the following up, and that's probably equally as challenging, maybe if not more, than the actual writing part itself.
And I think that part of it is even more difficult for people like us, like anybody who was in the intelligence community in any way, like even just military probably, but definitely intel. Social media, it still gives me like nausea. I still like break out into like a cold sweat every time I have to post something. It's like I'll reread it like 5 or 6 times before I hit post. And even then I'm still kind of giving it the side eye. It took me a long time to embrace the social media monster.
It was exactly the same thing. It was weird because going from literally from the shadows and not existing to then coming out and saying, here I am, and like, trying to, get the world to see me and say, come on, look at everything I do. It just felt so alien.
You'll understand this. After I retired, like I am officially retired, I put the first sticker on my car I've had since I was in college, and even then my hands were like shaking. I'm like, do I really want to do this? I know people probably don't understand that, but you get used to being, the gray man, like not Court Gentry, Mark Greene gray man, because that would be awesome. But still, being invisible, being somebody that's not easy to keep tabs on, or being the hard target that you kind of disappear into the ether. For years, all my clothes were like neutral colors. So it's like it took me forever to get back into wearing color and things that, even now I still wear color sometimes. I feel uncomfortable. I'm like, I'm kind of standing out.
I'm exactly the same. Like, you go into some of especially a lot of the modern stores now, and try and get a plain T-shirt. It's like everything. You got a Miami, California beach. I love 1960s, or a picture of some revolutionary on it or something, and you're like, I just want plain blue or plain white, or no, it's so difficult. I'm also here in England, everything's printed or patterned, and I remember even buying a pair of Armani jeans not so long ago. The first thing I did is I got home and I pinged the little badge off the back pocket, and my wife's going, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't want anything on it that can be recognised."
Yes. Well, it's like we used to laugh because this is way old school, but I used to have like little holes in all the pockets of my jeans from where the mic cords would go through. Through my pants pockets, and so for years I had to be careful because these
all the change and drop out.
So like little things like that, I had to have been retired, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. Like officially, I am out. I am done. I am not going back, and I'm still trying to adjust. Like,
Oh, I can believe it. Yeah.
I can be an individual again. I can put this sticker on my car.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because like everybody else, they'll go to the car sales lot, and the car salesman will go, "Hey, you'll love this one. It really stands out in the crowd." And people like us will go, "No, no, 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 no.
That's not what I want.
What's almost invisible?" Yeah.
It's like, let's see, white's the most popular color. Okay, there's white. Like there's 50 of those on your lot right now. Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, take one of those.
But like little things like that, you just you get so used to it, and then when I didn't realize how much it would become habit. It's just like it is something I just did without even conscious thought. And so getting on social media, having to take my picture and to like put thoughts out there and like all those things that seem so benign and so natural. It just, for me, it was like like aliens had taken over my body. I'm like, oh God, like what world am I in now?
Yeah, it really is crazy. And of course, my daughter, she just not long turned 11 in October, and I've kind of been teaching her a lot of like the tradecraft that has helped me over the years, in which I would play games, and she's absolutely brilliant in so many ways. We do archery, we do shooting, we do all this stuff, and she just loves it. It's fun to her. And we go out and we do this thing called the silly plate game. And what we'll do, she'll sit in the car, and every time the car behind changes, she has to read the last three letters on the plate and make a silly word from those three letters. And
That's awesome.
Yeah, we do that all the while. And so we'll do that in the silly plate game. We would do this thing where if you see the same car twice, you win that round, and if you see the same car three times, you win the entire game. So it's kind of, so the whole kind of spot it once, it's coincidence, spot it twice, it's potential, spot it three times, it's enemy action. So of course, so we do this. That's on the same car journey. If you spot the same car in three different locations. So yeah, I was teaching her all this tradecraft stuff, and then the other one, I play this game called Moodstone, Gavin Stone and Laura Stone. So I play this game called Moodstone, and we'll be walking through the city, and I'll just say Moodstone, and she has to look around, and the person on the street that might be walking the other way, she has to guess the mood they're in. Are they angry? Are they sad? Are they, she has to basically profile them. What are they doing? Where are they going? That kind of thing, and give me a feedback to say, oh, they're a threat, or they're happy, or they're not a threat, or that kind of thing. So, and I ramped it up from the very beginning, because we called Moodstone, because all we had to do originally was guess what mood they were in. Were they happy? Were they sad? Were they angry? And it just kind of built up from there. So one day she's probably going to be one hell of an operative. So
one hell of an author. I mean, it's like that's another reason that I think that we make this transition so easily, is because it's all about being creative. It's just your creativity is in a different world.
Yeah.
Like you're coming up with that person's story for the fun of it, instead of, okay, what's this person's story? How can I exploit them? Are they a threat?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but you can easily take that, and now it's a character in a book. Like, are they a threat? What are their weaknesses? So it when you think about it, everything's about, creative thought, thinking outside the box, using your imagination. It's probably why most Intel people are a little bit different than everybody else, because we don't really fit in boxes very well.
Yeah. And I mean, so I remember, because I have a little confession to make here. So the first attempt I had at writing, like I said, it was very autobiographical. That was the intention. I was going to write about what I'd done. And my mother-in-law was a writer, so I sent it to her, and I said, "What do you think?" And she got back in touch with me. She said, "That's not a book." She said, "That's a report." I was like, oh, okay.
Yes,
so she said, "No, you need to be, using your senses and descriptions." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I've spent years being told to facts, what happened, how it happened, when it happened. Now I've got to start expanding." So merging the two worlds of going from the bluff bottom line up front report to the kind of all the little intricate details, it was very alien. It took me a little bit of time to get used to it, but the creative side, once it came out, that was it. I started to enjoy it and run with it.
Yep, I completely get it. It's like, it was like, because you spend so much time writing, thousands of reports, like I can do this. I know how to write. And same thing. You get to an editor, and she's like, "No, this is not how you would write a narrative." I'm like, I've been writing narratives wrong all these years apparently, but it is different. And now I'm doing it again because I'm in film school. So switching from doing novels to screenplays, which are visual. It's you don't internal. There's nothing internal in a screenplay, because you can't show that really on the screen. You got to find a way to visually capture it. So it's a totally different style of writing. Again, there's different formats and methodology behind it. So once again, I'm back in that learning cycle of trying to figure out another way of capturing moments.
Yeah, again, I've learned that a little bit with looking at screenplays recently, and you've got to go from one extreme to this. So where I've gone, kind of describing a man that's walking down the street, and everything is getting description from the weather, the smells, how he's feeling, the blah 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 blah, the suit he's wearing, the creases, and why they're creased, and everything else. I've now got to go the other way to man walks down the street. And you're like, what about the visuals? Yeah, leave that to the producers and that kind of thing. All we need to know is what's happening. And it's like,
just the key things. What is key to make the story, and then let the actor and the directors do their jobs.
Yep. Horrible, isn't it?
It is. It's really hard. It's like you have it in your head, like this is how that's going to work, and you're like, but then at the same time, I understand, how it could. You're basically creating the inspiration for somebody else's art at that point, so. I think that'll also makes it a little bit more palatable to me. People have asked me, is like, if somebody takes your stuff and makes it into a movie, and it's nothing like the book, how are you going to feel? I'm like, well, as long as it's done well, I'm okay with it. But then I had to think about that. It's like, if my art inspired somebody else's art, I'm going to take that as a compliment and try not to be like, oh, well, I would have done it different. I'm like, well, this is their art.
I've heard these horror stories from a lot of authors who've had their books turned into movies, and they have very little say on anything that happens, in the movie, the cast or the scene or anything else. And if they're lucky, the most they get is something at the beginning that says based on the original books by, and that's about it. So, it must be difficult, and I can't imagine. So. When I used to read the Jack Reacher stories, and he was this great big kind of, and they go, there's a movie coming out. And I think brilliant, and I'm picturing this great big 6'10", muscular, rough, rugged guy who's going to come around getting into bar fights. And then they said, and he's going to be played by Tom Cruise. And I went, what? No. Huh? What, you mean he's got a sidekick? Like, no, he's going to be Tom Cruise is going to be Jack Reacher. Are you sure? In what world?
Tom has he definitely had the acting chops for it, but yeah, you're right. He wasn't Reacher. He just wasn't Reacher.
No.
And the movies were fun for what they were, and I did enjoy them. But have you seen the Amazon series Reacher?
I have. I started watching it recently. Now that's more like it. It's not quite, but definitely an improvement.
I'm a huge fan, so I got my husband sucked into it too. So he is Team Reacher now finally, because he never read the book, so he was never into it. But we've binged both seasons now, and I can't wait for the next season. It's going to be epic. But I think they found their niche. Not only did they get the right actor for it, but doing it in that format, it allows them to play with the story a little bit more. So you get more of the things that make the character what the character is
originally. I'm glad they've done the series, definitely. So and if anything, they should perhaps look at remaking a film now with the guy from the series and kind of
it's not without precedent. I think really probably only Firefly and Serenity are the only time you've ever had like a TV show that then became a movie. No, Star Trek. So it is possible. It is possible.
It'd be great to see if it does happen, because it'd definitely be worth it. Watching a feature.
I would watch it. I would totally watch it.
For sure. Right, I'm very conscious that we're coming up to the hour, and I'm aware that time is valuable, especially for someone like yourself. However, I have really, really enjoyed this. It's been great chatting to you, and
hopefully I didn't hijack it too much. This was just fun talking about all these really interesting little things. But
no, the show's about you. I feel guilty sometimes because I start waffling on, because in this world, like you say, we're kind of what's recently been described as ambivert. So we're not introverts, we're not extroverts, we're ambiverts. So we're like leave us alone and let us do our thing. But when it comes to it, we can do what we want to do and perform. So it's kind of weird when people from the intelligence community talk to each other. You've got that kind of unwritten understanding, haven't you? Yep. The creatures we are.
Kindred spirits come out in all forms, but I speak nerd fluently in multiple dialects, and all of this is my nerddom. So I'm happy to run down any of these rabbit holes.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being on, and it really is brilliant. So I will. It'd be nice to have you come back on again when the next two books come out, when the project's ready to kind of launch, or after you've launched. Yeah, we can visit from a completely different world, intelligence to horror kind of theme, and see where that
Oh,
goes.
just wait until you get a hold of my novella. It's
Oh wow, yeah, you, yeah.
psychological thriller. Here we go.
Yeah, if you want to send me a sneak preview of the first couple of chapters at some point, I'll give it. Horror's not normally my genre, but why not? Let's see. Let's have it.
Absolutely. And
Cool.
everybody will probably start seeing things that for both the novella and for the anthology coming out this summer, maybe even in the late spring. But yeah, the promos for that are going to start hitting.
Right, and for everybody who's interested, where can they find you? You have a website, I believe. Is that the best way to?
I do. It's amadair.com, and you can get all my social media through there as well, so you don't have to worry about all the different handles. But I am on, what is it, X now? X, Instagram, Facebook. I have not done TikTok. I cannot bring myself to do that one.
I tried.
Do it.
I don't know, put about 3 or 4 short videos on there. Not videos of me, but they're like kind of celebrities or authors or people who've kind of wish me luck with my book or that kind of thing. And I put them on there, and I was like, I can't do any more. And for years, people were saying, "Do you have a TikTok account?" And I said, "No." And they were like, "Do you know what a TikTok account is?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm young enough to know what it is, but old enough to know better than to have one."
Exactly.
And eventually, it was one of the guys at NBC said, "No, you've got to get it. It's brilliant for advertising." So I thought, why not? I'll give it a try, and I broke. Like I say, about 4 or 5 videos in, I'm like, not sure I can do this.
Well, my daughter's 11. She keeps asking me, she's like, can we do a TikTok? I'm like, no. Let me explain why.
Yeah.
But even though I've been out as long as I have now, I mean, it'll be 2 years in October, so I'm at a year and a half retirement. It's like I still can't bring myself to do TikTok.
Oh, I know. And of course, it feels alien sometimes when most people in the rest of the world say, "Right, I'm going out. I've got to grab my phone." And people like us usually say, "Right, I'm going out. I need to hide my phone somewhere."
Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah.
Anytime you go someplace and people are like, "Well, you can't take your phone," I'm like, "Okay." And everyone's like, "What do you mean I can't take my phone?" I'm like, "Is this a problem?" I was like, "Go ahead."
You know what?
I shut it off. It's like, we're good.
I'm trying to think who it was I was talking to not so long back. It was a friend of mine who I'm sure former intelligence, who again was either anyway. He was on holiday in England, and he'd gone to the Tower of London, and he'd taken his family there, and he said, "Look, while we're in England, we're going to go to the Tower of London, do the touristy things and whatever else." And his teenage daughter was absolutely fuming, and they were getting to the part of the Tower of London in the tour where they were talking about all the torture methods and who'd been tortured there and the different ways it had been done and the people who were suffering and whatever else. And she was just really fuming at the fact that she wasn't allowed to take photos, wasn't allowed to do a TikTok, wasn't allowed to video, couldn't have a phone, and there was no signal. And her exact words were, "I'm having the worst time ever in the history of Tower of London than anybody."
Oh my God.
I just cried with laughter when he told me. I thought, wow, can you
imagine? Well, we got a few things to learn about history.
Yeah, maybe now is the time to really actually not have your phone and pay attention to the tour guide.
Oh man. Yeah, but that's the universe of a teenager. It's like I have a tween right now, so I'm getting a precursor to it.
Yeah, I don't envy you. I'll teach
it's
you.
All right. It was like that's one thing my time in service has taught me. I'm like, my daughter will have a full surveillance team, and she doesn't get away with shit.
Brilliant. I like it. Remind me to teach you a little trick here when it comes to communicating with teenagers when we're off the screen.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So on that note, I'm going to end the recording. Just thank you for coming. It's just been a blast. I've just enjoyed chatting to you so much. It was just like catching up with an old friend. So, so for everybody who enjoyed the show, please give it a like and a subscribe. Please check out the website, and most importantly, buy the books.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem.